The voice of the Gaelic Games. This is how former President Mary McAleese has described iconic GAA commentator Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh, who has died today at the age of 93. His melodic, dulcet tones became synonymous with GAA coverage. The Dingle man kept fans informed and entertained during a career that lasted from 1949 to 2010. And here's a quick look at Mícheál doing what he did best.
He's running, but he's not allowed. His way is blocked. Sean Oak sends it down the field. Joe Dean comes out, tapped out the field again. Brian Cochran is in there. There and John Tennyson again. Tennyson in many ways, the man of the match. The game is over. Kilkenny have won number 29, and the dream of a course 3-0 has ended. A wonderful win for the Kilkenny men.
Well, I'm joined now by sports broadcaster with Off the Ball, Aisling O'Reilly, former host of the Sunday Game, Michael Lyster, and former GAA president and Kilkenny hurler, Nicky Brennan. You're very welcome along to the programme tonight, paying tribute. And we have heard so many wonderful tributes all day about the life and times and wonderful career of Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh. And I call it a career, but really he was doing what he adored, what he loved, what he knew best. And that was absolutely living up to the expectations of not just every GAA fan in the country, but I think everyone throughout Ireland, Michael.
But I suppose that's the whole point, and what we all did, be it Micheál, Michael O'Hare, Ger Canning, whatever, myself for 35 years and all that, we did what we loved, you know. OK, it was a career, it was a job, we got paid to do it, but it was something kind of special. And what made it special was the fact that it meant so much to people. And what Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh did was so particularly special because he was a radio commentator. He didn't really make the transition. Mícheál O'Hare did, but Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh didn't. He stayed on radio. And that totally suited him because, as I always put it about him, was he painted pictures on radio. He painted pictures. He described things that people couldn't see. In actual fact, when I joined RTE back in the early days, back in the early 80s, I remember on occasions sitting in the commentary box beside either him or Mícheál O'Hare. And one thing that kind of struck me and that I kind of took on board was because they were on radio, they used to call the play maybe 15 or 20 seconds after it was actually happening to give themselves time to kind of compose something, you know, the next play, the next bit. You can't do that on TV. Ger Canning, who is RT's top GAA commentator, he can't do that because the pictures are there. You have to be with it or not with it.
Speak to the pictures or lose it.
Yeah.
But also what a lot of people used to do was turn down the sound on the telly and turn up the radio so they could listen to Mícheál while watching the pictures as well. So good was that commentary. Do you have a favourite quote, a favourite moment that came from the mouth of Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh?
I think there's a few of them out there and they're classic. And they wouldn't be my favourites, they'd be everybody's favourites. And definitely one outstanding one was Sean O'Halpine when he was playing for Cork, the Cork Hurlers, and that. And as he was bearing down on goal from midfield, Mícheál said, his mother is from Fiji, his father is from Monaghan, Fermanagh, I beg your pardon. Neither are hurling counties. You know, and that just kind of summed it up.
The delivery.
You know?
Yeah. And there are so many, as we've heard throughout the day. The other one was the one of many, but there's been quoted a lot. The stopwatch has stopped. It's up to God and the referee now. The referee is Pat Oran. God is God. And actually, I'm interested as well because, I mean, you're from the younger generation who, like, you talk about people listening to the radio, maybe diaspora people abroad, and that's the way they heard and they consumed the matches. But how important was he, not just, I suppose, to your career, but as a fan, as a sports fan?
By the way,
he was a massive
Aisling is from
inspiration.
Martoth in County Meath.
Thanks,
So,
Michael. You get
that's-
that shout out in there.
yeah.
Thank you. He was a massive inspiration, and I think it was just his pure passion for the game. And I think something about Micheál, it was always about the people for him. You know, he wanted to know about their stories, about their families, about their mothers, their fathers, where they were from, their clubs. And I think that's why we all connected
And he
so
weaved
much
it
with
into
him.
the commentary as
He
well.
did,
The
and he did it
ability
so
to do that was
brilliantly.
poetic, wasn't it?
It really was, and he was just unbelievable at that. And I think for young people growing up, like, he was the soundtrack of our childhoods in the summer. You know, any Gaels growing up, going to games, you know, we were listening to Micheál on the radio and aspiring to be the next broadcasters or reporters. And I got to meet him a few times. I was so fortunate. And, you know, you're starstruck meeting him, and straight away he's giving you advice, he's putting you at ease, and he was just an incredible man, and so lucky to have
What
met
did
him.
he say? I think at one point you got to interview him, and you were a bit nervous about it, but
Oh,
tell
absolutely.
Us, tell
the
us what he
pressure
said
was
to you.
on. Yeah, we were actually doing a launch for the Paddy O'Shea tournament that happens every year down in Dingle at Bentry. He obviously would have been a great friend of Paddy's, the late Paddy. And so I was interviewing Micheál for the very first time. I was emceeing an event for the very first time. There was a crowd. I was very nervous. The pressure was on. And Micheál just put me at ease. And just as we were about to take to the stage, he just whispered in my ear and said, "Aisling, remember, you're in charge now." And it just really did just fill me with such confidence. And I thought, you know what, I have to do a good night now for Micheál.
Yeah.
He had a beautiful way of a kind of a put down without insulting anybody. And I remember on one occasion, we were coming back from some match or some event down the country. There was a carload of us. I think Marty Morrissey might have been driving, I can't remember. But anyway, there was a fella sitting in the front seat, and he was giving out holy hell about somebody. And, you know, taking them to pieces and all this kind of stuff. And eventually, Micheál leaned forward and he says to him, "Shawnee," he says, "you know him well." And what he meant by that was, you're the same kind of bollocks yourself. You know, so.
Let's bring Nicky Brennan in at this point, former GAA president and Kilkenny hurler. Nicky, I mean, from your perspective, how do you see Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh's legacy? How do you sum him up and his influence on the game?
Well, like his predecessor, Mícheál Ó, he was seen as the voice of the GAA. He was the person who communicated the action on the field in a very descriptive way, adding cúpla focail as Gaeilge when he felt it was appropriate. And I suspect many people picked up Irish phraseology from Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh's commentaries. He also knew his players very well. He made a point of meeting players, knowing what they were about. Michael has alluded to that there. So when he was talking about them, he knew the facts. He also was always very sympathetic to players. He'd never kind of condemn a player in the game. If things weren't going right, he'd find some excuse, or he'd just be decent enough to, you know, if things were going wrong, that was enough for the player. They didn't want the commentator making too much of a comment about it. So he was just the voice that brought the excitement. Bear in mind that for a lot of his commentary period, television was in relatively, you know, there was a certain amount of games on it, but for most people, the radio still was important. And he described the games in such vivid fashion that you could almost felt you were at the game. And then when he thrown in the different lines about players or whatever it might be, Michael has alluded to one there. I mean, a classic from my perspective was Pat Fox has it on his hurl and he's motoring well now. But here comes Joe Rabbit hot in his tail. I've seen it all now. A rabbit chasing a fox around Croke Park. That's just a saying that'll stand the test of time in sports broadcasting.
And I wonder, you know, listening to it all, I always wondered, was that all off the hoof, or how much of that was pre-planned and rehearsed? Because, as we're saying, some of the quotes are just pure poetry.
Oh no,
Michael.
you can't rehearse those things. They are off the hoof, if you understand me. And Nicky just referred to that. You couldn't rehearse that. What Nicky said there about the hare and the rabbit, you know, it just simply couldn't happen. You just get it off the top of your head.
And there was
just
another,
like that.
There was another one. Pat Fox out to the 40 grabs the sliotar. I bought a dog from his father last week. Fox turns and sprints for goal. The dog ran a great race last Tuesday in Limerick. Fox to the 21 fires a shot, goes left and wide. The dog lost as well.
And
it's two stories. It's two stories in a matter of
Micheál was a big greyhound fan.
Yeah.
And I used to occasionally travel down the country with them doing stuff. And cripes almighty, it could take you a week to get there, because if there was a greyhound meeting in Clonmel or wherever the case may be, he'd have to call in.
Yeah. I think one of the most special things about Micheál was just how he was always himself. He never lost himself. You know, he started out at 18, 19 years of age, and he kept that thick Kerry accent. And as we said there, all the different quotes. You know, he never lost himself. I think it's such a good message to young people nowadays to, you know, be yourself. You know, it's all right to be unique, and look at Micheál.
Yeah,
there's a great saying. I think it might have been Abraham Lincoln that said it. You can fool some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Micheál never tried to do that.
Yeah. No, he was always himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering just about the excitement that he brought to the game as well, Nicky. I mean, he did great work for the GAA in that regard. Would you agree with? Because there was probably plenty of dull games that he made very interesting in his time.
Yeah, that's well put, Claire. You're absolutely right. I mean, not every game is exciting, but he had the knack of doing that, and so did Micheál here. Indeed, some of the current commentators as well. Micheál Michael has alluded to some of them. Yeah, their ability to be able to make a game that's dull seem exciting. And you can do that perhaps on radio more easier than you can do it on television. And he was able to do that because he was just a wonderful ambassador, maybe the unpaid ambassador for the GAA. But also he brought that ambassadorial role outside of the country as well. I was on many All-Star trips with him, be to the States. I was with him at the Asian GAA finals in Pyongyang in 2008, and he was there among the Irish diaspora, and they knew exactly who he was. His son was involved in the GAA in Singapore. So he was a great ambassador for the GAA, brought the GAA message, and quite frankly, maybe his commentating role was what was his day job, if I could put it that, but his ambassadorial role was significant for the GAA, and I think the GAA would be very, very clear on that. Indeed, Jarlath Burns would have referred to that this evening. And it's something that, as an association, we will be forever grateful to Micheál for that role.
Yeah, and I mean, can you take something from that, Aisling, maybe in where the GAA are going, and maybe what is needed to keep a sport vibrant, alive and very much loved by everyone, given, look, various controversies about the way matches are broadcast now and all the rest of it, that there was that purity with what Micheál brought to the job in terms of, you know, building the excitement, building the momentum for the summer season and for the games.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most special things about Micheál, that it was the purity of it all. You know, he kept it so exciting and it was so raw and natural to him. He was never trained in this. It was just so natural to him. You know, when he started out at 18, 19 years of age, the first thing he did was a hurling match. He'd never seen a hurling game before, but he went out there and got the job because it was just that talented to him. Yeah. He was so
and
good
fresh
at it.
To him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, of course, we need more of that. You need characters within the GAA. And I think for Micheál, it's going to be very, very hard to replace someone like him. He's one of a kind.
Well, ní bhéal leithad an arís. It's often said, but never more true, I think, today, of Mícheál Ó Muircheartaigh. So our condolences to all of Micheál's family and friends at this sad passing of a legend. We're going to leave it there. My thanks to Michael Lyster, to Aisling O'Reilly and to Nicky Brennan.